Have you ever thought about learning multiple languages at the same time? I know I have. Every day I study 8 languages, and those languages are Spanish, German, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, Teochew, which is a Chinese language, Korean, Sanskrit, and Arabic. And there are a few other languages I study, but maybe not every day. For example, French, Italian, Swedish, etc. So what are my motivations for studying so many languages at the same time? Simply put, I want to be able to speak all of these languages, and so I study them every day. Because looking at the benefits versus the challenges, the benefit of studying multiple languages at the same time is you get to study them. As I've said in my previous videos, tomorrow is not guaranteed. So if there really is a language that you would like to learn and be able to speak, it makes sense to do it today. Now, the challenge, of course, is that if you study more languages, you have less time for each one. And therefore, the progress is going to be much slower than if you focused on only one language. But in my personal case or opinion, I know that I want to be able to speak all these languages at a high level. So I have to reach a point where I'm juggling or balancing the languages all at the same time. Because if you don't use the language, it will begin to decay. So you have to figure out a way to study all your languages on a regular basis. If not every day, maybe once every few days or once every week or two. But if you're going like months or 6 months or a year without speaking the language, you're probably going to lose proficiency in that language. So it makes sense to start practicing that skill of studying all the languages now. So how do I choose the languages that I study? Basically, I choose the languages that I want to study, the ones I like, as well as the languages that the opportunity to study them comes up in my life. For example, Arabic. Arabic I didn't really have much of an interest in just personally, but at the Language Academy with Professor Arguez, he is very passionate about Arabic, and he started a class for Arabic, learning it from the very beginning. And I thought that was a great opportunity to jump into the language and learn it. Because, yeah, I'm interested in modern languages. I want to be able to speak to different people. And Arabic is a very important language in the world. It also has a lot of influence on a vast variety of other languages. So it's an important language. So I joined the class about 2 years ago, and we went through As-Samil, the 1975 version 1 and the 2005 version 1. And now we're reading children's stories. Right now we're reading Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. And that feels really good to have made the progress to do that. So when choosing your languages, you could choose languages that are in the same language family, or you could choose languages that are completely different. So languages in the same language family, if you don't know already, I wrote this book, Comparative Grammar of Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish. And Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish are all in the same language family, the Scandinavian language family. And the benefit of studying similar languages is that you get a bonus. Because when you learn a word or a grammatical structure in one language, usually it's very similar in the other languages. So you don't have to study as much to get the same impact in all the languages. Now, of course, the downside to that is maybe you think you might confuse the languages because they're so similar. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, is because the best way to not confuse languages is to see them side by side so that you can see exactly what they look like and how they're different. And this can help you keep them separated in your head. And that's a good way at keeping them apart and learning them so you don't confuse them. But you also may want to learn languages that are completely different. Like maybe you want to learn Spanish and Russian, or Japanese and Hindi. And in those cases, you probably won't tend to confuse them, although I do know people who have difficulty at first keeping them separated just because they're so used to speaking one foreign language that they kind of feel like everything that's foreign belongs to this one foreign language. But the key to that is you just have to practice keeping them separated. If you make a mistake, maybe write out the two sentences in their proper formats and then study those so that you don't make the mistake the next time. So how do I structure my day studying 8 languages? The first thing I do is I make sure I get study time in at the very beginning of the day. The first thing I do in the day is I meditate for 45 minutes. But after that, as I'm eating breakfast, I begin studying languages. And I do this because sometimes my days get really hectic, very busy. But if I make sure I do the language study at the beginning of the day, then I know at least I got that study time in. I try to get in at least 1 good hour on the languages that are most important to me. And if I can get that hour in, at least I know I have that 1 hour. And even if I don't do any other study for the rest of the day, at least I got some in. So how much time do I use for each language? I study in 15-minute blocks. I try to get in at least one 15-minute block per language, although some languages I'm more serious about. So for example, Arabic, right now I'm really trying to improve it to get my vocabulary higher so that I can learn and speak and read and understand more. So right now I devote an hour to Arabic, just studying vocabulary, going through stories, reading, and so that gets more time. The other languages, I try to get 15 minutes in, but sometimes I can't even get 15 minutes in. Sometimes I can only get 5 minutes in. Maybe I just go through an Anki deck and I review the flashcards that are up for review that day. If I'm out and I'm somewhere, then that's an easy task I can do. I can just pull out my phone and do Anki and study while I'm waiting in line, trying to buy something at a store. So the learning methods and resources I use, if it's at the beginning of a language, I tend to use resources like Asamil, which is a language manual or a textbook. And if it's a language that I'm more advanced in, I try to read real material. So for example, German, I started off going through the 3 versions of the Asamil, the 3 different time periods, 1950s, 1980s, and the 2000s versions of the Asamil for German. And then after that, I jumped into reading a real novel in German that was written for, I think, young adults. So that was a really great way to read real literature in German and be able to practice my German with actual authentic material for natives. But I think the best way to learn and to use your language is in a much more organic way. So what that means for me is I like to get the language involved in my life. One of the best ways I've learned to do that is by having language partners. So especially for Chinese, right now I have 2 language partners. I meet them for at least an hour a week. And we just hang out and we speak Chinese. For example, yesterday was Friday night. I went out to Chinatown with my language partner, Wenxi, and she took me to this Chinese restaurant where I got some food, and then we got ice cream after that, and we walked around Chinatown. So it felt like we were just socializing and hanging out, but we spoke in Chinese the whole time. And that was a great way to learn the language, get familiarized with it, while also just having a good time and going out on a Friday night. So how do I avoid mixing up the languages? Basically, like I said before, if you do mix them up, maybe you have similar languages, you want to write them out next to each other, and then you want to study them that way so you can see where they're different. And you want to practice. You want to say them a few times in the right way so that you can be able to speak them correctly. Also, you want to practice just speaking in one language for maybe 5 minutes and then switching immediately to the next language for 5 minutes and then going back. and just practice flipping between the languages like that until you're able to speak the one you want to speak at the correct time. So my advice for you, if you're a beginner and you want to learn multiple languages at the same time, is at the beginning, you may confuse the languages, you may mix them up just because you're not used to using multiple languages. Because to use multiple languages, to speak multiple languages is a skill in and of itself that you have to practice. And like any skill, the more you practice speaking multiple languages, the better you will get at keeping them separated and only speaking the language you want to speak. So my advice is basically, if at the beginning you feel it's difficult or you find that you mix up languages a lot, don't worry. As long as you keep at it, you keep practicing, you will get better and better over time at keeping them separated. And yeah, at some point you'll be able to study multiple languages without getting them confused, and you'll be able to make progress with the languages as you desire. And at that point, it all comes down to just time management. If you can manage your time correctly and set up the habits to give at least 15 minutes a day to each language, then yeah, you can learn multiple languages at the same time and make progress. So I hope that helps. Next week, I'm going to be making an announcement about my language community on Skool. But if you want to get a sneak peek and even sign up for that, look at the link in the description of this video, and you can click and see the video I'm going to put out next week already. It's posted on the Skool community if you click the link. And if you want, sign up. It's going to be a great community, but I'll talk more about that next week. And if you are studying Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish and want to get this book, the link is also in the description on Amazon, so check it out. So I hope this helps. Good luck in your language studies. We'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.